Welcome to the Autism Outreach Podcast. I'm your host, Rose Griffin, and I have a delightful conversation for you today with Dr. Erik Jacobson. He works for Upstate CP, and he is a wealth of information. He talks all about how to transition from a caretaking model to more of an instructional model for the clients and students that he is serving. And wow, they are touching so many lives and providing compassionate care. So if you want to provide compassionate care for your learners, I am delighted for you to tune into this conversation today.
You're listening to Autism Outreach Podcast, a podcast full of ready-to-use strategies to help those with autism strengthen their communication skills. Here's your host, Rose Griffin of ABA Speech, a speech therapist and board-certified behavior analyst who shares tips you can use in your next therapy session.
Welcome to the Autism Outreach Podcast. We have a wonderful guest with us today, somebody I'm excited to connect with again. Welcome, Dr. Erik Jacobson, to the podcast. I am thrilled that you are here.
Rose Griffin, I'm thrilled as well to be here. It's awesome to chat with you today.
Yeah, and I feel like we're kind of living parallel lives. We have a lot of the same colleagues, and you go to conferences and you're doing great work. And I think we met a long time ago, haven't talked since then. So, but you always are so supportive of my work and hopefully vice versa. So I'm excited for everybody to learn about you. But I don't know the answer to this question. Can you tell us a little bit about you and kind of your journey into the field and, how you decided you wanted to go into the field and, what you're up to now?
That's a good question of how I got to this point of where I am in life. I just had my 50th birthday, so I had an opportunity to reflect about a lot of different things. I think how I ended up getting the field was I went to Carnegie Mellon as an undergrad in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It was a brief stop at John Carroll University where Megan DeLeon went to school. But then I ended up going to Carnegie Mellon, and they really have a quite an impressive experimental psychology program there. So I got a lot involved in a lot of research while I was there. I ended up taking a position just for a year after school with Sheldon Cohen, who's works in the field of psychoneuroimmunology. But anyways, not that I was interested in looking at how people can develop colds, but that was his area of research, which was particularly interesting for me. But I ended up getting curious about research questions. And I think curiosity built from my time at Carnegie Mellon. I then went off to graduate school at University of South Carolina, fighting Gamecocks, and was in their clinical psychology program that also has a community psychology wing to it. And so you learned both about, micro clinical work and then more macro type interventions as well, things that were done in the schools or community. So that really got me interested in more large scale both research and kind of evidence-based practices. During my time at USC, I also worked in schools, mostly alternative schools within their special education departments, doing therapy and doing all kinds of things like having to give the sex education talk to middle schoolers, which was fabulous. So then I ended up, that took me one thing to another. And when I got my degree and my PhD, I ended up finding my first job in a preschool program in Long Island. It was the only one that was hiring unlicensed psychologists. I still needed a year of supervision, and got me really involved in the special education within New York State. And so from there, my wife and I, who's also a psychologist, we wound up going upstate. And that's where we got positions at Upstate Cerebral Palsy at the time. It's now Upstate Caring Partners. And that was really my journey at that point, from working with preschoolers for about 4 years. Prior to that, I'd worked in a lot of different settings, and I was really comfortable working in different settings, but I liked congregate settings. I liked working within a team environment. And then I wound up at Upstate Cerebral Palsy, and have been here since, although I took a brief trip to a program that's more of a mental health program for about 4 years, but I've been here ever since. So, Upstate Cerebral Palsy really serves individuals across the lifespan for intellectual and developmental disabilities from EI all the way up through adult services. We have around 315 people that we provide residential services for, and 72 of those are from our school age program, which is known as Tradewinds.
Interesting.
So it's that was back in 2006, and things have changed quite a bit over time from there. But that was all part of the journey.
Wow, amazing. So wait, so I'm in the Cleveland area. So you were at John Carroll for a year. I didn't realize that. Okay.
I think we talked about that. Yeah, I'm originally from outside of Warren, Ohio, which is outside of Youngstown. Total Rust Belt guy.
I didn't remember that. Actually, the Warren, Ohio, as a sidebar, has this really cool place called the Grand Resort. It used to be called the Avalon. I don't know if you ever went there, but it's really
the Avalon. Yeah.
Okay. It's actually very nice. There's like lots of golf, and it's really pretty for that area. Yes. Okay. Oh, fun. Okay. Interesting. Love that. Yeah, Megan, she just did a talk for us last week. It was obviously amazing. She's so great. So with Upstate Caring Partners, I know that you've made a shift from more of a caretaking model to more of an instructional model using ABA. I guess, how did that start? Can you tell us the journey of how that started and how has that been going? Yeah.
I would say it first started in 2011 when I decided to leave, that I needed a break. Yeah. I felt like, for the population that we were working with, adults with moderate to severe disabilities, I should say moderate to severe intellectual disabilities with and without other developmental disabilities like autism. Like I couldn't figure out how to have long-term impacts related to their challenging behavior. I felt like I was constantly in this whack-a-mole, like let's handle this problem and then let's go handle this problem, and that we weren't really able to improve the quality of the lives the way that I want to. So I ended up taking some time away, although I stayed on as a consultant during that time, and officially came back in 2015. And I said, if I come back, I really want to do this differently. Yeah. And so we started going about trying to figure out what would be the best practices, particularly related to challenging behavior. At that time, the clinical department was, our chief firefighters, and we were running around and just managing crises. We would staff those challenging cases all day long. And at that point, it was a group of individuals that were in our clinical department that could be social workers, general psychology, master's degrees, some school psychologists, but it wasn't certainly as fine-tuned as where we are today with our department. And still on the journey to figure that out, it was kind of a serendipitous moment that I ended up going to APBA in New Orleans in 2017 because the agency had two plane tickets that they needed to use in a brief period of time. Okay. And I was looking at some place that I'd never gone to before. And I said, this looks like it would be a good place to go. It was a great place to go. And on the second day, I believe, I ended up walking into a symposium that was around challenging behavior, and a number of Greg Hanley's students were presenting in that symposium. I could have easily gone into another presentation, but I ended up in that symposium. Greg was in that symposium as well, though he wasn't a presenter. He was fielding questions related to his ISCA at the time, and I'm still a lover of the term ISCA. But we were trying to figure out what we could do differently, and I was really touched by the presentation of his students and of Greg. He got up, he was funny. He was a lot of controversy around what he was doing at the time, apparently, but he was, that there seemed to be a buzz around this intervention. But he talked about, a brief way of analyzing behavior that was more of a direct way to do it. And it was something that we always wanted to move towards in this agency, is like, let's get our clinicians in front of the behavior to try to understand it. And let's get a set of a sequence of interventions that we could do to improve the quality of life. And that just, it was really hit for me of something that could be done. From there, we ended up tracking down Greg to come on to our site in 2017. I said, I don't have any BCBAs that work for our agency at this time. We had a couple of consultants, but no one that was working for us. And he said, that's okay. We've done it before. And that kind of led to the start of moving into this instructional model. So what Greg led to was we got down into those CAB branches, contextually appropriate behavior, where we're trying to teach something, and we realized that we had a lot of stupid goals that we were working on for the individuals that were in our program, right? They were doing worksheets. You could walk into anything into some of our classrooms. It was like worksheets on Christopher Columbus, hand over hand craft things where we're going to give it to the parent, or staff doing the hand over hand and putting it in the student's backpack. It was wrong. And you knew that. And you're like, how do I get out of this mess? He gave me a way to get out of it. But what we got from that was we need a better curriculum for addressing needs for the students that are in our program, which are students with moderate to severe disabilities, intellectual disabilities, almost all with intellectual disabilities, and about 80% with the co-occurring autism spectrum disorder. So that's our population that we deal with. About 40% come into our program with no forms of communication. Our history was about 40% would leave our programs without any form of communication. So we really didn't have a lot of evidence-based practices going on back then. And this is like 2017, but we knew we wanted to go in a different direction. And so going up into those CAB branches is when we eventually landed on the Central for Living and the work with Pat McGreevy, Troy Fry, and connecting with them over that curriculum that really spoke to what needs to occur for our students. Let's go address essential skills. Let's not pretend anymore that we're giving skills that they're never really gonna get. I'm sorry, I got a gnat there. So that really led us to a better way of providing services. During this time as well, we started working more with Joanne Mateo from Pyramid around pets in particular, and moving that into our program as one of the most used AAC in our program at this point, and being able to train our staff in order to deliver on that service. And so that's what we've been doing probably more in earnest since about 2018, 19 with Joanne, when we were doing that. Some other neat stuff that has come along the way with this instructional model was how we are going to provide more of a compassionate approach to building strong relationships, creating safe environment, but also doing it in a dignified way. And that's when we started doing the universal protocols, often kind of associated with happy, relaxed, engaged. And that was what we started in at the beginning of 2020. Greg was working with us more at an agency level at that point, and he came the last week before the world shut down. And we started putting these universal protocols together in our school age program and our adult program. And then during this COVID time, we just continued to go after it. COVID provided some interesting opportunities in that everyone was back. All of our individuals that reside with us residentially were back in their homes, and you could address some of the home issues with the clinicians that were on site. So we, that really kind of pushed us into this more instructional model. We're definitely on the right path, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done.
So it's fascinating. I guess from like a business standpoint, I'm wondering, so you decide you're going to do this, make this shift. And I think you have some line you use like shift.
We make shift happen. This is a Troy Fry. I always get to say it for me. We have a lot of words, a lot of phrases.
Okay. I follow. Yeah. Yes. I follow you. Make shift happen. I talk about social media a lot because that's where I live, but make shift happen. I like that. I'm thinking then it's a training and a staffing issue. So you're realizing you're going to try to transition to this instructional model, which is really amazing. And I love it. And I've taken the 10-hour Dr. Hanley. If you're a speech therapist and you don't know, just Google Hanley. I've had Dr. Corey Whalen on and some of his students.
He's great.
Yeah, he's great, right? So I'm thinking you probably now you have to employ. Then did you hire a BCBA? Then what was that like? How do you find your first BCBA? Right. And now I know you have a lot more BCBAs. But what was that? How did you find that first BCBA? That was probably a fun hire.
It was a fun hire because it was one of our consultants that was working almost full time through one of our agencies that we were affiliated with at that time, who said, Eric, would you ever think about hiring a BCBA? And I say, you ever think about it? Yes, absolutely. And so we hired Allison Kim, who I believe was on our conversation when we spoke many moons ago.
Oh, okay.
And we ended up hiring her at the end of 2018.
Okay.
And we are now, and then that was our first one. We were like, okay, we'll have a consulting BCBA that will go around and just be awesome and help shape up this instructional model. But from there, what we did with the VP that still oversees, the senior VP that oversees the education division, is we went about, that's Jeremy Earl, we went about shaping up what our staffing model could look like.
Yeah.
So then we shifted to a 1 BCBA for every 2 classrooms. We run a 6-1 3.5 program in trade winds. And this was primarily where we were focused at that time, is like, there's money in our school programs. Let's figure out ways that we could utilize that to leverage outcomes that we wanted to get to. We ended up looking at, what sort of positions do we need? And we needed more of these BCBAs. So that was the goal. We ended up recruiting outside. And at that point, it was like right at the beginning of COVID times when we really started to be able to recruit differently. And I think some of it was COVID circumstances where some of the clinics were shutting down or work didn't necessarily look like what someone wanted to do. People still wanted to do on-site stuff. We provide the opportunity for that. And then we were running the school model. I mean, the thing about Greg is that there's that the work he does speaks to the direction people want to go. The value he lives it's a very value-oriented treatment. And I think it hit at a crossroads at the time that people were like, yes, let's do this. So that was back probably 2019 where started a little bit of traction around it. And then as we went into this COVID time, then we were just able to recruit differently. So we were able to get people from throughout the country to the program. Some have stayed, some have left. And I know that's part of the industry, is not everybody's going to say, particularly in Central New York for the life, but come here, learn some skills, learn this model, and leave a better person because of it, and be able to do things that you weren't able to previously do. And that's kind of the model and the advice that I always give people, is like, get the skills early in your career so that you can do amazing work later in your career, like being able to supervise, but don't jump too quickly into that supervisory position before you really have the skills down. And if you could do this work with this complex group of students that we have that come throughout New York State into our program, it's really going to make you a stellar clinician. So we shifted from the clinician solely being responsible for challenging behavior to providing more broad quality oversight over what's going on in the classrooms, identifying the right goal, working directly with the certified teacher. Many of our classrooms right now, it's really hard to find certified teachers. So we have talented aides or RBTs that are leading the classroom. So they're working with them while we attempt to continue to recruit teachers. And that they're able to, those BCBAs are able to really craft what are the goals that we want to work with. We use a lot of the Essential for Living for identifying the goals that we want to work on. And that's what informs our IEPs, are those, is that necessary 9 skills is what we try to focus most on for our students.
Yeah, I love that. And if you haven't heard of that, I love that. I got my district when I was working in a district to purchase that, because I was working with older students, and I love the Essential 9 skills. And I love how you're transparent in saying, like, we were working on crafts and we were doing worksheets, and that I knew that wasn't what was best, but to make this change is a process, right? A marathon, not a sprint. So it sounds like you're doing amazing work. And it's really exciting for people, like with the recruiting piece, where you're having, Dr. Hanley and Essential for Living team come in and train. And that is a really exciting time. I went many moons ago, I worked at the Cleveland Clinic, and we would have people like Peter Gerhardt. One time Peter Gerhardt came in and talked to like a room full of like 15 of us. And I knew that was not lost on me and how special that was, because now I've since seen him keynote all these conferences, and I just love him. But those are really cool experiences for people to have, and really building their competency of care for where they're going to work. So it sounds like you've done so many great things. What is kind of the future? What are your future goals for Upstate CP?
So it's funny, the issue that we brought up with crafts, because before we would have like maybe a staff member doing crafts. Right. Now we actually, you see a lot of crafts going on in our program. But we are using a lot more event-based teaching in order to address some of those IEP goals or those skills that we want to teach, but doing it through the crafts, whether it's staying with a group, whether it's something actually about the craft itself, whether it's being able to tolerate, an activity that they may not have previously wanted to tolerate, but to do it very much in that HRE kind of way. So you're not forcing, but you are trying to collaborate around that skill. So you see a lot of that. So event-based teaching is pretty front and center for us, is how do we do that as much as possible throughout the day? Have school be less like traditional school, but more like life, because many of our students stay in residential care or are at home living with their parents after. And we want to give them a set of skills that are going to improve the quality of life for their caregivers as well. And so they're not as dependent on them. So leisure skills, being able to get those essential communication skills are so important to us. And, that's why a really heavy focus on building those communication skills, whether it's through kind of SPT and more functional communication training, or just building out their overall repertoire of communication skills. So big focus on that. We also have hired a director of applied research, and she's no longer a director of applied research because she has a new title. As of last week, she's the AVP of applied research, Dr. Megan Boyle, who came to us from Missouri State. Back in 2022. And so she's gone about this year really developing some lines of research in our program. So some areas that she's focused on, elopement, focused on some work around skills-based treatment, and then focused on some work with behavioral contrast, which is a topic near and dear to her heart. And she actually spoke in a way that I understood it, which was great. So we have that area. We're hiring a new BCBA right now to work underneath her, just solely doing research, which we're excited about. And then we're also hiring a data analyst to help build up our way of collecting data. We're still not where we need to be with collecting more aggregate data. And that's something that has been a hurdle for us and that we're looking to get figured out by the end of this year and into next year. So that's a big piece. A lot of work around retention and recruitment of staff over on our residential side. So we're building up that end. John Horn is our newly minted AVP of behavior analysis, and he's going to be overseeing the overhaul of what behavior analysis looks like in residential programs, which probably founded it more in RBTs than it will be in BCBAs. It's a tough group to recruit from. In our area, we have very few BCBAs. When we started it, I think it was like in a 50-mile radius, there was like 12. And so, yeah, I know that was real. So, in addition to recruiting outside, we've also grew our own BCBAs, sent people back to school. Nice thing with it is that we're able to pay for a good majority of people in our school program to go back to school. We are able to pay for almost all of it over on our residential side. So those are things, if someone's looking to go on to school and not incur debt, I would certainly look for agencies like ours, and they exist all over the place, that will likely send you back to school to get your master's degree, to get your certification coursework that didn't exist when you and I were in school. That wasn't possible. But this is a whole new world that we're living in because the workforce has fallen out, and like ours are looking just to how do you continue to survive. The foundation of that is having talented staff, and having talented clinical staff is big for me. So that's big. And then we have a conference coming up as well in July of 2024. We put on our first conference in 2022, and we're going to do it every other year, biannual conference. And this year we have a 2-day conference in Utica, New York. Some more details are coming out soon. I'm jumping through my final hurdles, but we have some initial agreements from people that are looking to come. Ditu Rajaraman, Megan DeLeon would be there. Peter Gerhardt gave an initial okay. Pat McGreevy, Troy Fry, Greg Hanley's group will be there. So we have that. And we did that last time where we had a lot of big names at the conference. But then we also had practitioners were able to go up and talk about how they're bringing this stuff to life, what that data looks like, challenges that they're dealing with. And we're going to expand that this year, that you have more of a voice for people that are doing great work in the field to be able to present that work. Likely be a little bit of a skew towards PFA, SPT, but also some of the work around EFL, essential skills. Andy Bondi is going to be there. Hopefully he gave an initial agreement. All these people are initial agreement, so we got to go back. They're not in contract or anything yet, but it's nice that you got people that want to come together, like-minded people that are interested in to this kind of synergy that you get in a kind of small boutique type conference like this. And they all come to Utica, which is one of those things that I never thought I would say.
Haven't been there, so not sure what that means, but it sounds small.
Not many people have been to Utica, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so those are some of the big things that we're doing. We're doing a lot of cool work in our adult program under John, so looking to expand that. I think showing our state that just because someone's in an adult day hab doesn't mean that they need to stop learning skills, and that you don't need to mollify the whole environment in order to give them that skills. We also have some cool stuff going on in our preschool program where we have a few self-contained classrooms that we're developing this year that's going to be part of a response to intervention model, so that we can address those behaviors that are hard to address in more of an inclusive setting, particularly for kids with severe problem behavior. We'll use the preschool life skills as well as PFA, SPT, and then get them ready for a less restrictive setting.
Oh, wonderful. Gosh.
Yeah, so it's cool stuff.
Yeah, it's so cool. Well, thanks for coming on and sharing all of that. I'm excited, and I think working with you would be amazing. So if somebody is looking for jobs, I want to go to Utica. But it sounds like a really vibrant kind of place. I mean, I love it. So where can people find out more about you and your work, or is there a website that's associated with your center?
Absolutely. So upstatecp.org is our website. You can find information there. Certainly, if you're not friends with me on Facebook, become friends with me on Facebook. You may need to tell me why we're friends if you don't have any other like friends, like Rose is not your friend. Do a lot of work on there, on LinkedIn, as other areas, but you can connect with the agency around it. I really do try to get out a lot of the work that I'm doing on my own personal pages, and I think that's important. Then you'll also see pictures of my family. Maybe my son scored a soccer goal.
I mean, same. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was great to connect.
Oh, Rose, this is awesome. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat about all the work that we're doing.
Thanks for listening to Autism Outreach. If you enjoyed the show today, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode full of actionable strategies you can use in your therapy room. Write a review too. That would mean so much to me. I always love hearing from you. Have a specific topic that you want included on a future show? Reach out over on Instagram, ABA Speech by Rose, or visit me at www.abaspeech.org.